erosion, well, some type of organic control or.
Good afternoon. This special council meeting for the Township of Selwyn for Tuesday, March the 4th, 2025 will come to order. We respectfully acknowledge that we are on the treaty and traditional territory of the Mississauga and Anishinaabe. We offer our gratitude to the First Peoples for their care for and teachings about our earth and our relations. May we honor those teachings. Please observe a moment of silence so that council, staff, and members of the public can quietly reflect on our duty to the community that we are trying to serve. Thank you. Members of the public, staff, presenters, and members of council, please be advised that meetings are broadcast and recorded and made available on the internet. Is there any declaration of pecuniary interest or the general nature thereof? Seeing none, please note that in the minutes. We are going to go to our planner, but before we do, I want to set a couple of ground rules for this evening. Welcome to you all. It's nice to see an audience for a change. Usually we're talking to an empty room with council. We know there's a great deal of interest in this application. So I would ask that everyone listen and be respectful. Staff will provide an overview of the application, and the applicant's agent will also provide an overview of the proposal. Our intention tonight is to have the public meeting and hear from everyone who has an interest in this application. We will gather this input and a report will be brought back to council. So to be clear, council is not asked to make a decision tonight. Depending on the comments received today, the next report to come back to us is expected to be in April. In terms of the process today, we will have those in attendance in the council chamber speak first. If a matter has already been addressed by a previous attendee, please consider whether to raise the matter again for the sake of time. Everyone addressing council is asked to state your name and address and go through the chair. Speak at the mic, just at the back of the room. We don't have anyone online that is going to be speaking other than our councillor, Terry Lambshead, who is here on behalf of the county. We will make every effort to answer all of your questions. If a question has already been answered, I will note this to avoid repeating answers that have already been given. I would ask that all comments or questions be directed through me as the chair. This includes the public, staff, and council members. This is very important so that I can coordinate and manage the debate. The first portion of the meeting is to allow the public to speak and ask questions. That will be handled by staff or the applicant's agents as far as the answers go. After the public has been given their opportunity, members of council will be given time to ask staff and the applicant's agents their questions. I ask again not to repeat questions already asked and answered. A few items of note. We're considering a planning application that relates to an official plan amendment. This is a county decision, and a zoning bylaw amendment. This is a township decision. County and township staff, and turn off your phones. County and township staff and the applicant's agent are here to provide information on the proposed development. Before starting the public meeting, I would like to provide some brief background about this area in general, which is known as the Lakefield South Development Area. In 2003, the township approved planning changes to expand the settlement boundaries of Lakefield. In creating the Lakefield South Secondary Planning Development Area, the following studies were completed. There was a planning justification report that identified the general location of residential areas, a small commercial area, main road network, parks, and environmental constraint areas. A traffic impact study was done. A report to assess natural features, wetlands, and ecosystems, population and housing projections, and importantly, a water, sanitary, and stormwater system servicing study. This study looked at things like water and sewer, main needs, pumping stations, and capacity of our water and wastewater treatment plants. It also looked at roadway needs and stormwater systems. Some infrastructure work has already taken place to upgrade the township's current systems, and as such, some of this work has helped to contribute to getting these lands ready for development. I note all of this because I think it's important that the public is aware that there were studies and extensive planning undertaken to create this development area. There was also public input. For over 20 years, the intention has been that this area would make Lakefield a larger village than it is now. Since 2003, there has been minimal development in Lakefield South. The speed skating oval and the south side of Kingdon Avenue are the only areas that have had any kind of development to date. It's appreciated that given the slow pace of development, that it may appear that developing in this area is a new idea, when in fact it isn't. Triple T is bringing forward a proposal because the area is designated for development. I would also like to note that the township has development charges in place to ensure that the costs of developing these lands will be borne by the developer and not the current taxpayers. So now we will go to our planner to announce the purpose of the meeting. Per.
Thank you, Your Worship. My name is Per. I'm the planner for the Township of Selwyn. I have some sort of legalese preamble to go through first. I'll also be going through quickly some public and agency comments we've received to date, and then I'll be passing it off to Keziah Holden from the County of Peterborough Planning Department. And following that, Kent Randall, who is the planning consultant for the developer, will provide the overview for the development. So bear with me here. The councils of the County of Peterborough and the Township of Selwyn are holding a joint public meeting in accordance with Section 17 and 34 of the Planning Act in order to consider an official plan amendment and zoning amendment, as her worship has stated, in support of a plan of subdivision for the Lakefield South area. The prescribed notice of public meeting was provided via prepaid first-class mail to all residents within a 120-meter radius of the subject property, subject to the applications, as well as by a sign posted on the subject lands. The notices were also available on the county and township websites. The prescribed notice of public meeting was further provided by a notice published in the Peterborough Examiner and on our township and county websites. I think I said that already. The notice circulation complies with the requirements of the Planning Act. If a person or public body would otherwise have the ability to appeal the decision of the Council of the County of Peterborough with regard to the official plan amendment, or the decision of the Council of the Township of Selwyn with regard to the zoning bylaw amendment, but does not make oral submissions at a public meeting or make written submissions to the respective approval authority before the approval authority gives or refuses to give approval to the amendment, the person or public body is not entitled to appeal the decision to the Ontario Land Tribunal. If a person or public body does not make oral submissions at a public meeting or make written submissions to the Council of the County of Peterborough or the Council of the Township of Selwyn in respect of the applications before the respective approval authority gives or refuses to give the approval to the official plan amendment or the zoning amendment, the person or public body may not be added as a party to the hearing before an appeal before the Ontario Land Tribunal unless, in the opinion of the tribunal, there are reasonable grounds to do so. If you wish to be notified of the decisions of the councils of the County of Peterborough or the Township of Selwyn in respect of the proposed amendments, you must make a written request to the County of Peterborough with regard to the official plan amendment or to the Township of Selwyn with regard to the zoning and bylaw amendment providing your name and address or email address. And I'll just summarize quickly that due to recent legislative changes to the Planning Act, general third-party appeal rights for this type of site-specific development have generally been removed from the Planning Act. If you wish to review current appeal rights under the Planning Act, that legislation is available online on the Ontario e-laws website. So in terms of public comments, we received some comments from Robert Short and Donna Rourke. Those comments are included within my planning report that are on the council agenda website. Township staff response to those comments are included in my report. We did receive one public comment earlier today from, let's see here, from Linda Gadd, who had 6 points. So as these points were not addressed in my report, I'll just go over them really quickly. There's a concern for the high population density proposed, a lack of bridge crossings across the autonomy, a lack of a concern for traffic, a concern around the subdivision design that Kent can maybe speak to regarding where the internal road and the lots facing onto 7th line meet. And then and where it is not being in support of future severances of those lots. There's also a concern about available classrooms and a concern about just littering within the area around Rays Creek. So I'll say in response to the high population density concern, this is a medium density development. It is not high density. There's quite a few single detached dwellings proposed, some row housing, and there are some apartment blocks which are medium density with apartment buildings slated to be a maximum of 4 stories. In regard to traffic, a number of traffic studies and traffic addendums have been prepared looking at specifically the traffic issue, which will be revisited as time goes on and at future stages of development occur. The traffic numbers and counts will be revisited in case further road improvements are identified to be required. In terms of bridge crossing, the County of Peterborough has a master plan, transportation master plan approved that's looking at a second crossing for Lakefield. That process has been started. It has not been concluded as yet as to where that second crossing will go. The rush hour time traffic, traffic that's been looked at. The overall subdivision design, I'll ask Kent to look to again speak to. In terms of classrooms, the Kawartha Pine Ridge District School Board has provided comments on the proposed subdivisions and have stated that there is sufficient capacity within the schools designated for this development to absorb the potential students. And litter dumping, finally, that is a property standards issue that was dealt with through our by law enforcement department. In terms of agency comments, we received comments from again the Kawartha Pine Ridge District School Board, as I went over, the Autonomy Region Conservation Authority. They are in support of the development with certain draft plan conditions that will be associated with the approval for the subdivision. Hydro One, Ministry of Transportation, Enbridge, and Peterborough Utilities have also provided comments of no concern. Curve Lake First Nations has provided comments also a couple of years ago. Just they have usual concerns around archaeology and natural environment. Those concerns have been addressed through an archaeological assessment, which the conclusion was that there was no artifacts found within the development area. There's also been an environmental impact assessment done for the site. And the plan of subdivision does have environmental constraint areas that will be protected from development. I think that's everything that I'm going to stay. I'll pass it off to Keziah to go over the process as far as county approvals go.
Thank you, Per, and through you, Madam Chair. My name is Keziah Holden, and I'm with the County of Peterborough Planning Department. And online, I am joined by Terry Lamsted. He's our planning representative from County Council. The County of Peterborough is the approval authority for amendments to the local component of the county official plan, and we are in receipt of an official plan amendment. The lands are comprised of 4 properties, not all of which have a municipal address, but they are generally in the Lakefield South area and extend from Lakefield Road in the north to the 7th line at the south end. I would just reiterate Pear's comment that if you wish to be notified of the decision for these applications and you have not already done so, then I would suggest you get in touch with either Pear or myself with your name and email address so that we can provide that notice to you. The subject lands are currently designated low-density residential, open space, and environmental constraint in the local component of the county official plan. And the purpose of the official plan amendment is to change the designation on the property to facilitate a related plan of subdivision application. The official plan amendment proposes to redesignate the lands to medium-density residential and adjust the environmental constraint designation on the property to reflect the plan of subdivision and the environmental impact studies that have been done for the site. The portion of the property designated medium-density residential would be also subject to a site-specific special policy, which permits a maximum density of 50 units per hectare. It would limit apartment buildings to 4 stories and limits local commercial spaces across the entire project area to 4,000 square meters. And the intent is for commercial uses to be located on the ground floor of some of the apartment buildings. The plan of subdivision itself proposes a total of 910 residential units in a variety of housing types, including single detached dwellings, townhouses, and low-rise apartment buildings. The plan also includes 2 parkland blocks, 2 environmental protection blocks, and a series of stormwater management blocks. And the subdivision is proposed to be phased through 10 phases, the first of which is at the north end of the site. There have been a number of studies submitted in support of the applications, including planning justification, functional servicing and stormwater management, environmental impact studies, geotechnical investigations, traffic impact studies, archaeological assessments, wetland loss and compensation plan, and a movement and connectivity plan. So those studies have been peer reviewed by Stantec Consulting on behalf of both the county and the township, and the Otonabee Region Conservation Authority has also reviewed the plans and select studies. The exception to the peer review process is the archaeological studies. They are reviewed by the Provincial Ministry of Citizenship and Multiculturalism as a condition of the archaeologist's licensing. And the ministry has indicated that those assessments have been entered into their register. Pear has gone over all of the comments that have been received, so I don't want to go into that too much more. And I can speak to the transportation master plan. So in 2022, the county had a transportation master plan undertaken. It did identify that the congestion on Bridge Street would be at capacity, and it was identified that there would be a need for a second crossing. It would need further study. So the county is currently going through that process now of obtaining a consultant to undertake that study. So there are no specifics of when and where that second crossing will be, but that process has been initiated. As next steps, once the county has received a recommendation on the official plan amendment from the township, our department will prepare a report for county council. County council will then make a decision on the application, and then if there are no appeals within the 20-day appeal period, then the official plan amendment would come into force and effect. So again, if anybody wishes to receive that notice of decision, just get in touch with myself at the county or Pear at the township.
Thank you. And now we will hear from Kent, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just have a PowerPoint presentation here. Put that up. And hopefully I can use this. There we go. Perfect. Thanks, Tanya. So thank you, Madam Mayor and Council. Good evening, everyone. We're pleased to be here presenting these applications as part of the statutory public meeting, applications for official plan amendment, zoning bylaw amendment, And also plan of subdivision, though that's not officially being discussed here. It is something that is concurrent with these applications that have been submitted. Oh, there we go. Thank you. So my name is Kent Randall. I'm the principal at EcoView Consulting. We're the planners for the applicant and agents for the applicant. With me this evening is Jeremy Ash from Tatham Engineering, and Jeremy is the civil engineer on the project. We're also joined by Chris Ellingwood from GHD. He's the biologist. And last but not least, Bill Turner, representing Triple T Holdings, and his brother Matt Turner, who are the owners and applicants. And so we're all here to answer any questions that the public or council may have. What I'm going to try to do with this presentation is not go over the information that was already presented. I appreciate the mayor's summary of the history, so I won't go too much into that because I think that's important. But we're going to just talk briefly about the property, what's being proposed, talk about the applications, and then we're also going to go over some of the comments that we've received to date, and we have had some comments come in both as part of the process, but also through the open house. So just briefly, the site location and context. Pardon me, this sounds bad. So I think most of you are familiar with where this is. It's in the southwest part of the village of Lakefield, and the lands within the area known as Lakefield South. And the entire property is 140, or when I say property, I should just note that there's several properties, but I'll just use that interchangeably, property or lands. The lands are 140 acres in total. There's some frontage on County Road 29, it's the Lakefield Road, and as it transitions to Bridge Street in the north, as well as 7th line. The main part of the property, or the defining feature of the property, is Race Creek. It's the namesake for the subdivision, of course. But Race Creek is really what defines not only the property, but the design of the subdivision itself. So there's obviously floodplain associated with the creek, and wetlands and other natural features that are associated with it. And so those features are really that defining feature of the property, as well as the development itself. So in terms of the proposed development, as was pointed out, maximum, and I've noted here, maximum of 910 units within a proposed 10 phase plan of subdivision. So this is the breakdown of the dwelling units up here, 263 single attached, 65 townhomes, 582 apartments. And I say apartment and or condo units because the tenure of ownership for those units isn't dictated by the zoning or the official plan amendment. So it could be condo or it could be apartment, just depends on how it's developed. But the type of unit being apartment, so being a unit within a hall that has a common entrance with other units, that's what's being proposed in those blocks. The access is from 3 points. The main access for the first 5 phases or so is Tower Road. And as most of you probably know, Tower Road has been constructed up to the water tower on the property, or just adjacent to the property. It was mentioned that 4,000 square meters of commercial space is proposed, and I noted up there that this is also would constitute a mixed use development because of that commercial component. The commercial uses that we're proposing are what we would consider local or neighborhood commercial uses. So things like convenience stores, cafes, medical offices, like a physiotherapist or GP or dentist, or small scale retail. So not drive-through restaurants or larger scale retail. And of course, the idea being that we want to create a complete community. It's something that the provincial policies promote. It's something that the local planning policies promote. And that's by having as many services and uses together at once to limit the dependence of automobile usage. So this is just the draft plan. I'm sure many of you have seen this before. It's readily available on the township's website and the county's website. Just briefly, you can see here, hopefully use the laser. There we go. So these sort of pinkish kind of colored blocks that you see in here, these are the apartment blocks. So they're spread out sort of. This is phase one up here, and you can't see the phases on this. It's kind of light colored, but phase one starts up here. And then it kind of goes down in here, phase two, and then phase three kind of goes in here, phase four. So those colors are those colored blocks are the apartment blocks. This lighter beige color are the single detached dwelling lots. And then these along here, the sort of orangey color are the townhome units. So you can see, an array of housing types. And then this lime kind of green color are the parks. So the active parklands, the parks that will form part of the parkland conveyance to the municipality. This color green, these are stormwater management ponds. Okay, and they'll also be conveyed to the municipality, constructed by the developer, of course, and conveyed to the municipality. And then this large block here in the lighter green is the Race Creek block, the preserve block. And then a similar type of block is over here, where there is a wetland feature that's going to be put into an environmental constraint or environmental protection designation. These are just the site statistics. It's hard to see, but if you are looking this up, there is a table on the plan that shows the breakdown of the units and of the sizes of the blocks. Oh, and I should also point out just briefly that these blocks for the apartment buildings, when you look at the plan, you'll see outlines of apartment buildings, you'll see parking lots. Those are simply conceptual. So how the apartment building looks, where it's placed on those blocks may change and likely would change. The design of the parking lots themselves would likely change, and landscaping, that sort of thing. And those details come out in site plan approval. So the apartments are subject to site plan approval, and when they do get developed, the developer goes through site plan approval and they have to provide those details to the municipality. In terms of the highlights of the proposal, I mentioned Race Creek and it being sort of this defining feature. And really that's sort of forms part of, or the backbone of what's trying to be achieved in the development. There's a lot of open space areas. I'd shown those open space areas for the active recreation, so the parkland, but also passive recreation. Enhanced walking and cycling trails throughout the development. One of the big features of this that you don't often see are these multi-purpose trails that will be located within the collector road allowances. And you'll see the cross section in a moment, but the multi-purpose trail will lie on one side of the road. So they're wider road allowances than we typically see in subdivisions like this. And that's to provide more connectivity throughout the development. And I'd mentioned the parklands to be conveyed, but the big feature here is the 37-acre block surrounding Race Creek, and it's to be protected within an environmental protection designation, environmental constraint zone. I'm sure a number of you are aware of the trails that go through there now. Some of you may use them. The idea is that those trails will continue to be used into the future within that protected area. Passive recreation is something that is permitted within environmental constraint areas. So that is something that's a big feature of this proposal. And I've noted here over 30% of the lands are actually either passive or active recreation. This is the connectivity plan. This is also available on the website. Those circles show you a 3-minute walk radius, or about 300 meters, depending on your pace. But it's just there to show the proximity between parkland features and units and that sort of thing. So these are the cross sections. So the collector roads, and if you look here, the collector roads, the local roads are the darker lines there. The collector roads are the lighter reddish lines. So within a collector road allowance, on the left, you'll see sidewalk on one side, multi-purpose trail on the other side. And so you've got your 26-meter right of way. Local roads will simply just have the sidewalk standard requirement within the township. This is just a photo of that, just for your amusement. Those are photos of existing conditions within that Race Creek area. So we've got sort of this ponding and the creek area and trails, and this is typical of the cedar forest that's within that area, all to be protected and used for the enjoyment of the public. So the history, I won't talk about the history, that was summed up well by the mayor. I think that the main takeaway here is that this has been identified by the township over the last 20 years for development, and to the point that there was infrastructure investments made in around 2010, 2011 with the construction of the water tower and Tower Road. In terms of our applications, Triple T, and I noted that here in the last slide, the Triple T had purchased the properties about 2016, 2017, and then began the process of doing their own studies to ensure that the development as proposed makes sense on the site. That culminated in submission to the township and county, and that was late 2020. The applications were deemed complete, which is an important milestone under the Planning Act. In 2021, March, because I had noted the peer review that had taken place, so there was a number of resubmissions that were made, so responses to peer review comments. At this point, we received sign off from the county peer reviewers as well as Autonomy Conservation. It was noted the consultation with Curve Lake, which had taken place. A virtual open house was also held, and I'm sure some of you might have been online for that. That was held on July 9th by Zoom. It was attended by about 20-25 people. And then we provided a fact sheet and distributed it to all the neighbors within 120 meters. It was also posted on the development's website, racecreek.ca. I'll have that at the end in case anybody's interested. And of course, that brings us to tonight, statutory public meeting. In terms of what comes next, if this is approved, the applicant will start on phase one, the phase one portion that I showed you on the north part. Site works, if that occurs, site works likely start in 2026, 2027 at the earliest. Typically, when you're clearing draft plan conditions, so when a subdivision receives draft plan approval, the applicant has to clear a number of conditions. That takes a long time because that involves detailed design and a number of other things that need to be taken care of. So that usually takes quite a while, like 18 to at least 18 months to 2 years. And I noted or as we'll discuss, the idea is that this development takes place over a long period. This is a long-term plan, 20 to 25 years at least, as demand requires. And we'll get into sort of what that means on a year-by-year basis. I won't talk about the proposed amendments because I had summed that up, but I will speak briefly to the zoning amendment. So the draft plan will be divided into several zones. There's a residential type 1 for the single attached. And then there's a residential 3 exception for the apartment blocks. And there's a residential 3 exception for the townhome blocks. And then that includes provisions in the apartment blocks for the commercial floor space. Should also point out too, and I don't know if it was necessarily brought up, but that 4,000 square meters, that's across the entire development. So that's capped, and that's capped based on the retail market analysis that took place back in 2003. Of course, open space zones that apply to stormwater management and parkland, environmental protection zone will apply to the Race Creek block. So I'll just briefly go over the public comments. Sorry, this thing is. I'll do here. Yeah, if you don't mind. Thanks. Okay, so these are from the FAQ page, and I'll just go over them briefly. I think one of the concerns that came up quite often was this is a very large development. It's the village of Lakefield is approximately 2,000 people right now. When we look at the calculations, if we were to calculate it based on the census, you'd be looking at about 2,000 additional people within this development on its own. So that's practically doubling the size. So how does the community absorb that? Next slide, please. So the main point to be made is that it doesn't happen all at once. And it doesn't happen all at once, and it can't happen all at once for a few reasons. So first of all, the build out is expected to take 20 to 25 years, likely longer. If you're looking at it from a 20 to 25 year standpoint, that equates to about 50 units per year on average, so about 120 people per year. And that number would drop with apartment units, which are typically smaller in terms of the number of people per unit. And each phase of the development is carefully planned through detailed design. So how do you do that? Well, the draft plan conditions that are built in to the plan of subdivision have mechanisms that when you get to a certain point, the developer has to ensure that there's capacity, or the township has to ensure that there's capacity within municipal systems, particularly sewer and water, before proceeding with developing further units. As it stands now, the 910 units cannot be accommodated within the municipal sewer and water systems, but the idea is that they will eventually be accommodated over that period of time as units are developed, development charges are collected, taxes are collected, and that sort of thing, and as the municipality grows. In terms of the soft services, like what we would call soft services, like emergency medical, school, that sort of thing. Again, it's a similar sort of thing as the municipality grows, those would grow with it. It's never perfect. Some things lag behind others, but it comes with growth. It's one of the things that needs to be assessed when a municipality is growing. But the idea, of course, being that the 10-phase plan, so the 10 phases in this subdivision, is being implemented to look at this, in a holistic way, to look at this in a long range way, rather than doing it piecemeal. In that way, sorry, go ahead. And then in that sense, it's a better way of planning. In terms of the traffic, next slide, please. That was just a question about the additional crossing, because I and Per both brought it up that the municipal Class EA is underway. I will point out here and emphasize this, though, that the development itself does not prompt an additional bridge crossing, and that is in accordance with our professional engineers. That's true. Yes, correct. So professional engineers and as peer reviewed by professional engineers. Next slide, please. Then what happens if the roads get busier? So what would have to be done? So each phase requires the developer to update the plan. So what will happen is traffic study typically has a 5-year shelf life. So it would have to be updated as the phases are built out. So that ensures that if anything changes, if there's another development that takes place, there's additional traffic on the road, then if the next phase of development is to proceed, it needs to address those traffic issues. Next slide, please. Does the development include affordable housing? So as it stands right now, there's no plan for it, but it's important to note that zoning does not dictate that, doesn't dictate whether units would be affordable or not. So should someone want to develop the apartment units or any of the other units as affordable units, they could do that. There's nothing precluding them from that, but that's just the nature of zoning. It doesn't do that. Next slide, please. Will we be requiring homeowners to use alternative methods for heating and energy usage? Next slide. So at this point, it's just simply circulated based on what's available now. But it's important to point out that the developer will not restrict the availability of any services to these new homes beyond what's readily available to the public. Okay, so the applications don't stop any alternative energy from being provided to the units. Next slide, please. How much parking will be provided? Next slide. So the single detached and townhome units each require 2 spaces. So that would be required on each individual lot. The apartment units will require 1.75 spaces per unit, which is in keeping with most municipal requirements. Parking for commercial units will be based on the commercial use itself. So the zoning bylaw does have a breakdown of certain commercial uses, and there's a number of spaces typically per floor area that's required. there are opportunities for EV charging stations, which could be explored during detailed design. So that's another aspect as well. Stormwater ponds are proposed to outlet into Race Creek. Has there been any consideration of the potential impact that the stormwater may have on the creek's hydrology? And yes, there has been. There was a functional servicing and preliminary stormwater management report. Tatham prepared that, and a natural heritage assessment that was prepared by GHD. We have the authors here tonight. So during storm events, runoff from the subdivision gets collected in those ponds. I'd noted those ponds before on the plan, and they're eventually released into Race Creek. What happens is that there's quality control measures that are constructed to ensure that the water that is being released is treated and it's of a certain temperature and it's been filtered to a certain extent and then put back into the creek. Also, the development implementing low impact development, so LID features that includes pipes, perforated pipe systems, soakaway pits, vegetative filter strips, rain gardens. So those things on a lot level, on a site level, which also contribute to minimizing stormwater impacts. Next slide. Then the natural heritage assessment speaks to those features and notes that it recommends that the outlets that I noted that into the creek are treated through a bioswale feature. And then a lot of this detailed design is done through the clearing of draft plan conditions, but we certainly do know that the site can accommodate the stormwater ponds, and that the stormwater ponds, there's technology to treat the water before it outlets to the creek. Next slide, please. Our house is serviced with a private well. How will this development affect our well? So that's, of course, people on Seaforth as well as 7th Line and on those areas to the east, to the west and south. The main thing being that the proposed development's on municipal sanitary and water. So that certainly is a good thing because it doesn't impact drawing from that aquifer or any aquifers that are being used. Groundwater generally flows to Race Creek, so from southeast to northwest within the development area. Existing homes on the west side of Race Creek, so the Seaforth homes won't be impacted by the excavation site alteration. And then the underground works that are proposed will be limited to the upper 4 meters of soil and bedrock. And that's quite shallow in comparison to depths of most of the wells within the area. And then again, the pipe systems remove the potential for contamination. Next slide. So that's it. And I thank you very much for bearing with me there through that presentation. Appreciate it. And we are happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Yes, please stand by. All right, so we are now at a point where I would be asking if there's anyone that's in favor of this application, if they would like to step up to the podium and if they have any questions or. Okay. I will now ask if there's anyone who is an opponent to this application. If you'd like to go to the microphone. Again, give me your name and address, sir, for the record.
Sure. My name's Ed Plechny. I'm 59 Clementi, Lakefield, Ontario, and a proud resident of Lakefield. I oppose the proposed rezoning from low density to residential to low density residential to medium density residential and commercial use. This application has been in the works, as the mayor pointed out, for over the last 20 years. Many of the reports were done in 2003 are now outdated in relation to high density and commercial or medium density, sorry, and commercial use. A lot of us here don't understand the details of the planning application process, and coming back to us at this point, after approvals all the way up to 2023 or whatever it was, the recent approvals, all of a sudden now we're going to medium density and commercial. That could have been disclosed at the start of this process. If this is approved, how long will it be before they're coming back for high density or commercial, other high density commercial uses. It's not really clear and it's not really fair. Secondly, it does not fully address or mitigate the increased environmental impacts of the proposed rezoning to medium density and commercial use. I haven't seen anything in the background documents that really address that, and I'd be happy to discuss it with the biologist here because that's my background and I'm quite happy to take it up. Thirdly, it excludes the developer from any responsibility for dealing with the impacts of increased residential and commercial vehicle traffic on Bridge Street and the bridge itself. It doesn't take a traffic study. You just have to walk up there in August, July or August, and look at the traffic backed up all the way out to the first set of lights or the village food pet store. That's not, like, I'd like to know when the traffic study was completed. Was that in February? Because there certainly is a traffic problem, and that bridge is also a public safety risk. There are broken up sidewalks, people trying to go over that in wheelchairs that could easily fall off there. I almost tumbled off my bike onto the road there. I should never ride my bike over there again, but that bridge is subject to high increased use as well as high risk for pedestrian and bicycling traffic, which will increase with the increased density. And I don't think that has been even touched upon. And it's beyond me why the developer has no responsibility for this, and it's downloaded to the county and to us taxpayers. It was our understanding early in the process that was going to be dealt with by the developers, and the development would not proceed until that bridge and the issue of traffic was addressed. But just to come up here and say in a planning process, we found in February that there's no traffic and it's not a concern, so we don't need a bridge, another bridge or another access route. That is unacceptable. Today, as most of you are aware, US tariffs and Canada's retaliatory tariffs are the focus of everyone's attention across Canada. The public notice for this meeting is dated February 10th. It was clear at that time that the tariff deadline was today. The timing of this meeting today demonstrates a breach of public trust and confidence of residents by trying to slam through an engagement process and tick the box to proceed with getting this done quickly when people are stressed and anxious about what's going on in the world today. Therefore, consultation on rezoning, as far as I'm concerned, should be put off indefinitely. First and foremost, to respect the current stress and anxiety felt by everyone in Canada and many of us residents here tonight. Ensure a fair and transparent process when people are ready to engage. We have barely had a chance to look at this. I know the planners and the people involved have 20 years of experience on it, but we can't keep up with that. Most importantly, to refocus Selwyn Township priorities on the urgent priority as requested by our premier for municipalities to go over the contracts involving US purchasing and find ways to support Canada in the trade war. In conclusion, I have a bunch of other questions about the bridge, but I'll just pass on my sheet here as hopefully as public record, and they can be dealt with separately after. I don't want to go on any longer. In conclusion, I would ask council to defer indefinitely this rezoning application to address more urgent priorities to all residents of Selwyn, Ontario, and indeed Canada.
All right, thank you. Who would like to tackle some of these questions? There.
Thank you, Your Worship. I can respond on a couple of fronts. I think as I had mentioned, as far as the traffic study is concerned, those have been peer reviewed by both at the county and at township level. Our peer reviewers have acknowledged that the work is done in accordance with applicable standards. In terms of public notice, the application goes back to 2020. A notice of complete application was circulated with the same notice, 120 meters. The proposal has been posted on the county and township websites and available for public review since that time. I think those were the two major points was the traffic and the public notice requirements. So the information has been available for the asking.
Thank you. Kent, excuse me, Kent.
Yes, Madam Mayor, I concur with what Paris said. I want to stress, though, that we're not using reports from 2003. We've done reports in the last 3 to 4 years, which have been updated as we've responded to peer review comments. We're not using 2003 studies. Pardon me, I will respond to your comments, please. The developer is not excluded from any responsibility. I want to put that, make that clear. The traffic study did point out the need for certain improvements to be made. So traffic lights, set of traffic lights at Tower Road and Bridge Street, traffic lights at 7th Line. The developer is responsible for those improvements. They're responsible for any other improvements that are caused by or are created as a result of the development. So they're not completely absolved of anything. I can't speak to the bridge condition. I'm not sure. I don't have details on that, but certainly, as I pointed out, that this is what traffic engineers have told us. I'm not a traffic engineer. I have to rely on professional traffic engineers. We have 2 of them that have confirmed that the traffic studies are sufficient. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Mr. Plesny, excuse me, you might have come in late, but you're to come through the chair with any questions, not to the podium, please. People online can't hear you.
The concern was reduced to a very simple level of what timing was the traffic study done, when, what were the dates, and was it done in peak periods?
Through you, Madam Chair, I don't know the exact month when it was done. I can get that information for you, sir. We're happy to provide it. And but I can assure everyone that there was significant background work done on those traffic studies.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that would like to speak in opposition to this application? Can you please go to, sorry, behind you first. You can be next.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. My name is Shelley Merton, Merton, and I am a resident of 2046 7th Line, right beside the road. I'm in opposition of it at this point because, number one, concerns about the traffic studies done on the 7th Line, the safety and security. I threw you to our gentleman who just spoke. When you said traffic lights on the 7th Line, does that mean where it connects to Highway 29 or where it's coming out onto the 7th Line beside my home? I can't picture where these traffic lights are going to be. And so that would be one of my first questions. Safety and security on the 7th Line has always been an issue, not only for the young families, of which I grew up on the 7th Line. When I grew up until the age of 9, there were no other kids beside me. Now there are many, many, many very young families who are now there. And all of us as residents on the 7th Line do have a number of very serious concerns about safety, not only about the speed in which people are driving, but the access between the road to our properties, both along the back line the back of our properties, as well as the frontage to the road. Is there going to be sidewalks? Is there going to be improvements to the road, which is dicey to begin with, the road surfaces? What about the security? Is there going to be fencing that protects our properties from intrusions from the road area? Not only do we have young families, we also have a number of owners that are seniors. Several of them are women who are on their own. And we do have very, very strong concerns about our safety and protection. As a teacher with KPR DSB and who has taught at both RIDPath and LDPS as we moved, I will be circumspect about what I say because I am an employee of KPR DSB. However, when we did move from RIDPath to LDPS into the renovation, we were on the edge of capacity. And within 2 years, we were over capacity, including the arrival of the cabin, which is the portable that was had to be brought in the dark of night into behind the school because of very strong community feelings that all went through the ARC process and the closing of the high school and then the renovation. Now, granted, as you clarified, the arrival of new homes and new families would be phased in over a longer period of time. It's not a sudden influx of all of these of families, but we do know that Lakefield is hoping to attract families with children to ensure growth. And the important part of that is the school. The board has not always been accurate in its targetings, 8 years, 10 years out of the number of students and families that would be needed at the school. So I would recommend that there be some additional explorations and looking into this on a more official basis as to what are the true predictions of the impact onto our local school. And can we, even over a gradual increase in time, and I do recognize that that is, we're over capacity and have been for several years. So we're growing. Even without the development, we're growing faster than the board had anticipated in this area, which is a yay for job security, but also a concern for our children and their ability to be able to receive education at both of our local schools, both the public and the Catholic school, and making sure that we're taking care of that generation and we're able to provide them with the high quality education that we have enjoyed in the past and would want them to enjoy in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Would either Kent or Pierre like to speak to that?
Thank you, Worship. I'll maybe start with some short response and maybe can add to it accordingly as before. With regard to safety, the subdivision currently is laid out that the lots in the new subdivision are back to the rear yards, so there won't be a street going along the rear yards of those lots that face onto 7th line. I think that should answer that question at present time. In terms of street improvements and general traffic flows, I think Kent touched on that. Again, the traffic impact studies speak to intersection improvements at the key intersections. And the school board question. I think Ken touched on this too already too. This is a phased development over 20 to 25 years. So preliminary comments from the school board indicate that in the early part now that there'll be sufficient capacity to deal with initial development. Their comments may change as the development goes forward and we bring further development online. And as we go back to the school board for further comments later down the road with the additional approvals that are needed, they may update their comments, but at present time, the school board is confident that they have capacity to deal with the proposed residents.
Thank you. Kent, did you want to add anything?
No, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank
Thank
you. We're going to go back to the podium.
I just wanted to respond back to something, Madame, through you to pair there. We had heard earlier in the presentation that the design of the certain areas, including the apartment areas, which is what's close to our section there, is not in its final form and can be different than what is pictured there. So I do raise yes. As it looks right now, it looks like there isn't that sort of thing backing up onto our rear portions of our property. However, if that is true, that there may be some design changes, that may change in the future. So if perhaps that does, is there other opportunities for us to then re-raise these concerns if the design does change from what is pictured today? And my other question through you to Kent, I've been going through and trying to figure out when that road that is accessing onto the 7th line, what phase that's in, and I can't really tell. So if that could be clarified, exactly what phase that construction of that road would be, that would also be helpful. Thank you.
Thank you. Per, did you want to speak first to the fact that if things change, would there be opportunity for public comment?
Yeah, I'll try to handle that. Unless there's a significant change requiring further land use designation or zoning changes, this is basically the public meeting for the proposed development.
I would just add on to that though, Madam Mayor, that it's not, so when you're looking at that plan, the blocks are set out and they're kind of set in stone. They can't be changed through red line revisions, right? But certainly that block itself, if they were to change the block around to single detached lots, that would, they would have to go through a process to do that. Now, I think it would probably be a major change, the red line change to the development, but there isn't necessarily a public process involved with that. So, but certainly that block is set how it is. Now, in terms of the phase, it's phase 5 that we have proposed right now through the mayor to connect to 7th line. That's when the requirement would come, and that's from sort of the traffic studies that have been undertaken, right? That we would require that additional connection.
Thank you. We have the fellow in the plaid, and then we're next. Oh, but he was next, so. Oh, and just to mention about the school, it's interesting that the school board has done nothing with Ridpath. It still remains empty. One wonders what they have in mind for that school. Yes.
Good evening. My name is Tom McAllister. I live at 76 Queen Street in Lakefield. I just want to sort of piggyback on some of the concerns that have been raised about the traffic study. As the gentleman said, there are no traffic engineers in the house tonight, or at least none that have raised their hand. Anyone who lives in the village knows very well between sort of 3 o'clock and 4:30 afternoon, the cars can be backed up all the way from the corner of Queen and Bridge, all the way out to Clementi, and perhaps all the way out to what we used to call the Maples. That is very heavy traffic. I would be very, very interested in knowing when the traffic study was done, both in terms of time of day and in terms of month of the year. If I recall correctly, I was in this meeting room quite a number of years ago when Triple T was had their consultants speaking about the traffic study for the lilacs. And I mean, the lilacs have worked out very well, but I asked the question. No, I didn't ask the question. Someone else did. When was the study done? And I remember very clearly the answer was in February. And the whole room broke out in laughter because it was laughable in a community with a lot of seasonal occupants that the study would be done in February. So I'm sure that the study has been done at an appropriate time of the year, an appropriate day of the week, and an appropriate time of the day. So I'm concerned about the bridge. If anything happens to that bridge, it's a fella that I know, Jim Forster, has told me that there's a sort of a certain number of years you can get before there needs to be a major rework on the bridge. We're approaching that point that's going to need a lot of work on the bridge. So if all these things, the confluence of these events in terms of more development, plus a bridge going down to one lane, we had it down to one lane this summer, and we already know how that story ends. It's very, very disruptive to the community. So I'm concerned about that, but I apologize. It's not a question, it's a concern. But I do have a question, and that is the retail. 4,000 square meters is 43,000 square feet. My question would be this. What is the current commercial capacity of the village of Lakefield? I am far more interested and concerned in a healthy main street than a healthy strip mall somewhere south of town. We've got a lot of restaurants in the village. I want them to continue to be successful. There are all kinds of different business people there. We need a vital downtown core if Lakefield is going to stay, the Lakefield that we love. So that's all I have to say this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Did Kent, you want to speak to the retail part of this? Because as my understanding, it's on the lower floor of the apartments. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Warren McKinley, I'm Shelley's neighbor, 2054 7th line. I just have a couple points. Per, the majority of the homes being suggested are backing onto the homes on 7th line, except for Shelley's and I. It's a parking lot for one of the fourplex or four high buildings. Is there going to be light pollution and bright light shining into the 5 backyards of Peacock and 7th line at the southeast corner? And the second point, I know condos have to have an X amount sold before they start construction. What's the process for this? Are they going to be a home that people go and look at and say, we're going to move here? Because as far as I can tell, I don't know 900 people that can afford to move here with no real jobs, and I just want to see it started and not completed. Thank you.
Thank you. Who would like to tackle that?
I could tackle the lighting question a little bit. We can certainly look at through draft plan conditions, putting in dark sky lighting requirements through conditions to the subdivision approval and the site plan application for the multi-unit buildings that Kent I think has also mentioned. So there's a couple opportunities for that for the township to look at that component. You want to answer the other part?
Yeah, and through you, Madam Mayor, just the other question about the homes being sold. So the tear-down requires that the homes be constructed before they're sold. So that's the intention with Triple T, is that they want to follow the rules, obviously. In terms of a model home, I mean, that's something that could always happen, that would require approval from the township if that were the case.
Okay, thank you. Would you like to go to the podium, please?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. My name is Dr. Bruce Gibson. My address is 29 Kingdon Avenue. I'm the only one who's put a shovel in the ground in Lakefield South with the development on Kingdon. And I own the land behind that from Kingdon going down to the 7th line. I was involved in a process here 20 years ago, designating Lakefield South as a residential area. My question to you, perhaps the planner through you, is does this development preclude any other development in Lakefield South?
Per.
I'll try and tackle this a certain way. So the development lands have been specified through that mapping that was shown at Kent's presentation. So that those land use permissions are put in place only for the project lands, right?
Yes,
So the balance of Lakefield South is currently designated low density residential, and it's zoned development D zone, which is basically a holding zone, which doesn't permit anything other than existing uses. So any future development on the balance of the lands within Lakefield South, somebody will have to come forward with a development proposal and seek appropriate approvals to put whatever it is that they would like to do with those lands before the township and the county.
well, just for clarification, though, I'm asking, it was approved as residential, for residential development. My question is, with this approval, is there still allowance with other facilities, infrastructure in the village to be able to develop that land as it was approved to be developed?
I think I sort of answered that. So currently, Kent kind of spoke to in terms of municipal infrastructure. There's currently not development capacity within our municipal water supply for all of Lakefield South. So over the course of planning for future development, the township will have to take appropriate steps to provide those services. In terms of detailed infrastructure with any future development within the balance of the lands outside of this proposal, it would be subject to development review. Somebody would have to come forward with plans and that type of thing for township and county review. In terms of both the land use permissions and the servicing for those, whatever that project may be.
Well, the land use provision is already there, low density residential.
Well, exactly. So, but if the development proposal was something outside of that, oh, am I on? I think am I on? Okay. If it was something outside of the low density residential designation, we would have to look at similar to what's being done with this project for an official plan amendment. It may only require a zoning amendment because the current zoning of D does not permit any development.
So just for clarification then, so that my lands are not, there's not an allowance left after this is approved to develop low density residential on my property.
We have an answer.
If this is approved.
Sure,
Yeah.
sure. I can try to answer your question. I think I understand what you're saying. So basically, as Parrott stated, through the mayor, as Parrott stated, one would have to come forward with an application, of course, like at the very least rezoning or plan of subdivision.
Necessary.
No, I believe it's in a development zone, the lands that you're speaking of. You're speaking to the designation, which is a different thing than the zoning. So the designation is in the OP. That basically provides the basis for it. That's the outlook that the township has for those lands. They want to see those lands as residential. However, the zoning, just like with these lands, has a development zone. Development zone essentially freezes things in its place. It says any uses that are existing as of the date of the passing of the bylaw, which basically says you can't do anything there unless you have like an existing use. You can continue to use that. But if you wanted to do something that's in keeping or conforms to the low density residential designation, you'd have to go through a zoning bylaw amendment to do that. And that's a planning process, requires supporting studies, that kind of thing. At that point, essentially the way it works with servicing is that it's first come, first serve. So the servicing that's available, developer comes forward with a plan, it's reviewed, they're allotted that capacity. Generally, that's how it works in most municipalities. I'm not what specific happens in the township in terms of their internal policies, but that's typically how it works. So if you were to come forward with a development proposal at that point, the township would review it in the context of what the capacity is at that point. That makes sense.
So in the future, Dr. Gibson, if you want to develop the land you own there, if you make an application, you wouldn't be handcuffed because this is happening.
It's not handcuffed. I was questioning about the utilities of the infrastructure.
Yeah, the water and sewer.
Capacity is available.
Right now, there's not enough capacity for this whole development as it sits. we have to increase our water and sewer capacity for all 10 phases. It doesn't exist today, but it does for the first couple of phases. But after that, we are going to have to increase our capacity. Does that answer your question? Okay. Yes.
Sorry, through you, Madam Mayor, just to touch on that a little bit. So we have done there's a functional servicing report produced by Tatum Engineering on behalf of Triple T as well, but we've also had peer reviews and consultants review this as well to look at capacity constraints. So there have been constraints identified through the build out of Lakefield South. As they've noted, this is a 25-year plan project, right? So as that development builds out, there is going to be strategic upgrades required on the water and the sewer systems. As those upgrades are completed, capacity will be created as well. So the idea is that these upgrades take place as this process unfolds and that capacity always stays ahead of the development. So there are key areas where within our water and sewer system that depending on the phasing and the allotment with those phases where we will be required to do upgrades. The eastern limits of Lakefield South, the property you're talking about specifically, if an application comes forward, we'd have to look at the capacity that's available at that time and determine what capacity is there and then what upgrades would need to be made in order to meet whatever the proposal you would come forward with is.
Are there any other questions or comments? Can you go to the mic, please?
Hi, I'm Tom Monroe. Am I allowed to speak if I live in Peterborough now? But I grew up on Seaforth Crescent. So my question,
What's your address?
like my current
We
address,
Still need your address.
317 Mark Street, Peterborough.
Thank you.
Okay. So it's not so much an opposition or a statement that I'm in favor of this as much as I guess a question, but I've heard some good insights here on how the proposed development will mitigate impact. And I know I've looked through the studies, whether they're traffic or environmental impact or all of these other things. So I think that there's quite a bit of work that's been done to look at mitigating impact. But I'm wondering, who and how are we looking at maximizing benefit? There is something to be gained here. There is, of course, something that is being lost, but there is also something that's being gained, I think. And I think with intention and with support from council and the developer, as well as community members, we might be able to identify some really interesting benefits from this process. And I wonder if there is a process to do that.
I'm not quite sure what benefits you're talking about.
Sure. We talked about the usability of the parkland space. We've talked about the school and its adjacency to this land. We've talked about the vibrancy of the commercial space that's in this proposed development. We've talked about active transportation and its link to the broader community to avoid traffic congestion. So there's lots of things that can be done in the design here to turn this into something good for the community. And so I wonder, is that happening just because of the good design from the developer or because of processes at council? Is there a way we can engage as citizens in this process of influencing the design to be something amazing that we can all be proud of? Is that a clearer question?
Yes. So who would like to tackle that? Pear, Robert?
I think I'll answer it this way. So there's a prescribed public process for public engagement through the Planning Act in Ontario, right? So the feedback mechanism on it is obviously, like I said, the information has been posted on our website. Both the county and the township are open to receiving comments on every aspect of that. And we really haven't received very much of comment on this particular development until today from the public. But that's the main avenue for receiving comments on a particular development, and through that feedback mechanism, through public comments being received, either written or oral, right? Like I said, there's at the initiating point through when the application gets submitted, there's a complete application notice that goes out to everybody, making people aware that there is a public application that's been in, a Planning Act application. in this case, 3 of them: subdivision, official plan amendment, zoning amendment. And then there's information posted again on our website and contact information to the county and township planning departments. The developer has had their website up as well, which there's a link to on our website. So you can always contact the developer as well to get further information. There's been an open house by the developer, which people had an opportunity to speak directly to the developer, provide comments, which then obviously we received that information, the FAQ document that was received from the key highlights of the comments from that process. And we do try and incorporate comments when we receive them. Staff at the township try and incorporate legitimate comments into the design process, right? We have looked at the multi-use trail. It's been gone through many revisions because of staff concerns, as well as some of the concerns from the public. The parkland, some of the details of those will be worked out as we get closer to developing those parks. Some of the concerns were timing of when those parks were going to come online. We'll look at the detail of that as the development moves forward and the phasing moves forward. Not so concerned about it for phase 1. It's on Tower Road. It's just the apartment block, right? But we can certainly look at through our draft plan conditions and subdivision agreement with the developer of when we would like to see those parks developed. And we'll certainly be having conversations with the developer on that Triple T. Likewise, when street connections go through, like when we connect out other than Tower Hill Road, when those other street connections go through, we'll have further conversations and conditions and so forth going forward as the phasing, as the future phases come online.
So Janice had a comment.
Sure. Thank you, Mayor Sanis. I just wanted to add to that as well. So just from that broader perspective, of course, we do have a number of plans in place that have been pulled together with a lot of public feedback. So we have our recreation services plan, which now incorporates our trails master plan. We have our strategic plan. We do road need studies. We do a lot of different studies. And again, so I think that really helps us to understand what the community wants and what they expect from us. And we take the principles and the initiatives and goals from those studies and incorporate that as we're working through with the developer. And I think you see that even in some of the broad strokes that are part of this application here. And again, this is a 20, 25, maybe more year development. And we go through those consultation pieces for those broader consultation for the broader planning documents, typically every 5 years or so, between 5 and 10 years. So there will be opportunity as the development proceeds for further impact or further input on those types of planning principles and pieces. So I think that will help as well. Yeah.
All right. I'm going to see if there's anyone else who would like to speak before I come back to you because you had a turn. Is there anyone who would like to go to the podium, please?
My name's Carl MacArthur, 3188 Lakefield Road. I back onto the development. Personally, we need housing. We've had people living in the bush behind our place. We've had all that. We need housing. So do I want housing? Well, no, I like being on my own, but reality is people need to live in other than cardboard boxes. I'm sorry. So I like the fact that this is a phased development and like as it develops, things will change, perhaps, whatever. My only concern is being on Rays Creek and living with a beaver I've been here since 1988 and I battled the little guy. And now with all these houses and townhouses, et cetera, I know the ponds, I'm familiar with retaining ponds and stuff, but it's still going to
go down into Rays Creek. And I just, 2 years ago, had a hoe come in and punch the beaver dam, and he's starting up again. So what I'd like, not to stop the housing, but I'd like the beaver being dealt with on Rays Creek so that all this extra water can move off without me being the floodplain. So again, housing's needed.
Yeah.
I know the Ontario government is saying we need housing. So I have no objection other than I'd prefer to be on my own forever, but that's not going to happen.
We hear you, Mr. MacArthur, and they don't call them busy beavers for nothing.
There you go.
Thank you. All right, is there anyone else that wants to speak? Yes.
I used to live on the 7th line. My name's Linda, and I'm now in Lakefield on, I forget, on the road to the beach. Yeah, thank you.
And your name is?
I understand the concerns about the
Your
water
name?
levels.
Ma'am,
Sorry,
your name?
Linda Gadd.
Gad. Thank you.
I understand the concerns about the water level in the creek, but you also have to remember when that creek is dry, all the wells on the 7th line are also dry. There is a connection. I personally think there's an underground aquifer that may not yet have been recognized or surveyed. So that aquifer was drained when the county township built or improved the highway, the Lakefield Highway, and our well levels went down by 10 feet that year, and there was no evidence of any runoff. They used the gravel pit further down the road, and it just seeped away and disappeared. So you need to be really careful what you're digging and where you're digging, or all the 7th line will lose their wells. So please consider that. Not that I'm there anymore, but
Thank you for the comment.
valid.
Is there anyone else that would like to speak?
Well,
What's
Yeah.
Nobody else wants to speak because okay, go on up. I'm not letting Plesney near that microphone until everybody has spoken, and then you can go, Mr. MacArthur.
Well, Doug Collins, 2011, 7th line. Just a few notes that I picked up through this one. You say there's only going to be 2,000 new residents over the whole 25-year thing. Housing prices these days, you're going to have a lot more than 2 people per house. You should bump that number up to about 4,000. And then you also got to equate, now you need 2 to 3 cars per household because you're going to have 3 generations living in there. So that's going to have to be rethought about, I think. With this all changing, does it change our taxes and everything living on the 7th line? Am I going to go from low density to medium density and up all my rates that are already through the roof?
I can let the treasurer answer that.
It's you, Madam Mayor. In terms of the assessment process itself, that's definitely MPAC, right, that does that. With respect to everybody's taxes are a factor of assessment and tax rate. And as council is well aware, we have the lowest tax rate in the county of Peterborough.
But his question was, because it's changing to medium density, will it affect his property and his taxes?
As I mentioned, that's an MPAC issue, right?
Okay.
And so they take a look at the assessed value, homogeneous neighborhoods, subdivisions, all those types of things. So everybody's open to a reassessment at any time.
Okay.
Thank you.
As for the traffic study, I did see that on the reports that I've got. And the numbers did seem way low for what I've seen up and down my road every day, especially in the summer. And for the well issue that was just brought up, about half the houses on that road that I live on, the 7th line, don't even have a well that work. Or it's very close to not working with a backup cistern. So we already have a water issue. We don't need any more disturbances screwing it up. Thank you.
Thank you.
To answer the water issues, in 1989, my wife and I installed a ground source heat pump. So we had two ways of doing it. One was to draw water from Rays Creek or from our well and return it. And I did a study on well records in our whole area. I think I still have the report. Our house, fortunately, is one that has a spring-fed well. And when they did the gas line, I told him that he's not going to be able to go under the culvert. He didn't believe me until he hit the geyser and he came on our property. So anyway, there's been an issue with water in the whole area, like not just 7th line, up the road or whatever, north. And like I say, we're one of the fortunate ones that have a spring-fed well. So anyway, that's, I think the solution on those areas that have problems with well would look into connecting to sewer and water when it's available to them. I don't need it, but that's a possible solution for them because it's been an issue since 1989.
Thank you. Mr. Pelesny, you're our last speaker.
A short 3 questions. One, I think I know the answer, but I just want to clarify the cost of capital improvements for sewage, water, bridge, dealing with traffic or public safety, multiple costs across there, as I understand it, will come back to resident taxpayers. Secondly, if that's the case, do we have a long-term capital plan that looks at what those anticipated costs are with phased development and a way to deal with that that load on our taxes? And then thirdly, is this process open to additional public comments, and what's that period? Because I think it's still open, but I'm not sure.
All right, so do you want to speak to the taxes, Lane?
Sure, it's you, Madam Mayor. I'll build on a point that our Manager of Public Works made earlier, that growth pays for growth. So the development charges process definitely is had a number of studies. We've looked at the Lakefield South area in particular in a lot of detail. And so any of these public investments that will be required go through the development charges process. So the developer will be required to pay a development charge on every lot. And of the investments, there is always some portion which is beneficial to the existing community, and some portion which is beneficial to the developer. And our consultant has reviewed that area at least 3 times and probably 4 times, and we've updated the costs every time.
Thank you. And Per, public comment.
So with regard to public comments, they're certainly open to receiving public comments until decisions are made on the applications. After that, it's sort of a moot point once a decision gets put in place. So as the mayor mentioned, we're looking at bringing this matter back to council in April. So if you still want to provide written comments, you can do so to the county and to the township until we bring this forth again for a decision by council. The county may be open to be receiving comments a little bit later, because what happens now in April is we provide a decision on the zoning amendment only, a resolution of support or not for the subdivision would be decided upon by the local council. Likewise, the subdivision, it's only a resolution of support or not for the development proposal, which is then forwarded to the county. The county council is the approval authority for the subdivision and the related official plan amendment. So comments can be received and considered and put part of the planning report for those two applications up until a decision is put forth to county council.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm now going to bring this to council. Are there any questions or comments with regards to the application? None. Councillor Koulis.
Through you, thank you. I just want to I've got three pieces here. So the comments about fences, I think that is something to consider. So I'll just leave it at that because I don't know where that sits in the planning process. But I do think it's a good idea to consider, but questioning who takes on that responsibility and the maintenance, that needs to be clear for everybody. The boundaries for the school, those have changed for KPR. So I'm wondering if those boundary changes have been considered in the traffic study and in the school board's comments. Can anyone speak to that one?
Here.
I'll just ask for clarifications.
Yes.
Boundary changes to which?
So for the school board for KPR, they've changed the boundaries of where kids can go to school. So like my kids currently go into Edmondson and I have one who cannot go there in the spring. So I'm gonna have kids at different schools. So that's going to impact different buses and the amount of kids in each school. So that will impact people living in the area depending on where they can and can't go to school. So I'm wondering, and that decision was December 10th or 13th. So I'm wondering if that's been considered.
Yes.
Through you, Madam Chair. So the comments that we have from KPR are dated July 9th. They were recirculated to KPR in the fall and they said they had no changes to their comments, but you do make a good point and we can certainly recirculate just to make sure that the boundary adjustments have been accommodated in their most recent comments.
Thank you. And my third piece was just through you, sorry. Yeah. There's a number of people here who seem to be speaking for other people. I highly recommend you encourage your friends and family to make comments. And if you don't know how, please ask for direction on how, just because there's a number of people saying, I think we can get more details out of other comments coming in. So please do so.
Thank you. All right. Is there anyone else that has questions or comments? Councillor Boyko. Well, you go right ahead.
You go ahead.
No, I've asked Councillor Boyko to speak. Councillor Boyko will speak.
Okay. I have several questions prepared, Madam Mayor. I know you'd be disappointed if I didn't. So I'd like to begin by making 3 points. First, I would like to publicly acknowledge the many people in Lakefield who have expressed to me that they moved to or remained in the village because of its sense of community and the small town atmosphere, and believe sincerely that the Lakefield South development, either completely or in its current iteration, threatens that which they hold dear. It is not NIMBYism. I'm not sensing that from people expressing concern. It's not NIMBYism, but a sense of threat to that sense of community that I believe must be acknowledged and respected. The second point before I begin my questions is something that I've been saying to people who have been speaking to me, and that is about Triple T. If this development is going to happen, I think we should be very happy that it is Triple T that is doing the development, because Triple T, the brothers and fathers that are involved in the company, they're local, they're very experienced, they're good people, and they do quality work. So I think we should be fortunate that the Triple T is the one that we are dealing with for this. Third point before I begin my questions is that I know that the people at Triple T and our planners and everyone involved see this as a blank canvas and therefore as an opportunity. Wouldn't it be tremendous if we could build a community that was seen across Ontario and Canada as the way it should be done? Not only the community that is built in what is to be Lakefield South, but the way in which it is meshed with and complements the surrounding communities that are already in existence. Let's see that if we can pull that off. Now, I have several questions, Madam Mayor. I can go through all of them if you wish, or do one at a time and let someone else speak. I have grouped them into 6 core areas. The commercial spaces. I have questions about the apartment buildings, questions about parks, about environment, recreational open spaces, and I have questions about streets. Would you like me just to begin?
Why don't you take the first 2 and then we will pass it over to the deputy mayor so that he can have his say, and then we can come back to you.
Very good. So the first 2, commercial spaces. I read the planning justification report. I found it interesting that the planning justification report that came out, this is tangential, but it came out a number of years ago, and the current one on the books simply has a red line struck through the date and a new date. I found that interesting. So that nothing has changed since that planning justification report apparently was first presented. I noticed that the commercial space is some of the ground floors of the apartment buildings. This goes to Kent, I guess. But there is no specificity about which apartment buildings these commercial spaces are going to be in. The Tatum engineering report dated December 20th, 2024 asks for that specificity before it moves forward. So I would ask Kent then as my first question in this category, where will these, is there a plan now as to where these commercial spaces would be, which apartment buildings and in which phases?
Through you, Madam Mayor, the councillor. So just to answer your first comment or question about the planning justification report, it doesn't mean that nothing was changed. It's just simply updating the original report. So there's been a number of updates to that report over the course of the last 4 years, including most recently the 2024 provincial planning statement. It had to be updated to demonstrate consistency with that. So it's not that it hasn't been changed to reflect changes to the plan. It certainly has. In terms of the specificity of where the commercial it goes, there is no specificity at this point. And the idea being that the 4,000 square meters that's allotted to this entire area could go within any of those commercial blocks. So it's just on an as needed basis or as it's built out. So should someone developers, let's say the first phase of development, if Triple T is looking at the first floor of one of the buildings for a portion of that commercial space, they could do that. They're not obligated to, but they could. So there is no specific building or block within which the commercial units will be located.
Okay, this second question that I have through you, Madam Mayor, to you, Kent, and again, the same notion. It talks about 4,000 square meters, and it says permits up to 4,000. Is there a planning standard that states the number of acres in a development or the number of people or the number of units in a development that therefore equals 4,000? Is this 4,000 arrived at through some kind of planning standard?
So through the mayor, it actually is arrived at through the 2003 retail market study that was done in support of the Lakefield South area had identified a specific commercial block within the area. It was actually to be located at 7th Line and Lakefield Road. That was the initial location. And it was up to, I believe, 5,000 or perhaps more than maybe 75. Yeah, 7,500 square meters of commercial space. And that was done through that study to determine what would be the threshold for commercial space that would not detract from the downtown or any other retail uses within the village. So we took that in consultation with the township and county because we were redistributing it from that corner and putting it throughout this development that we would reduce it. We would restrict the commercial uses because there were actually other commercial uses that were contemplated in that retail study for that corner. So the compromise was that we would reduce it to 4,000. That was the number that we came up with after going back and forth. About half of what was allotted in that initial study, and then the range of uses was reduced in scope. So there are less uses that are permitted than would have been permitted in that corner.
I see. So these commercial, and thank you, through you, Mayor, the commercial development as part of this development is very important because this is not a condominium development that is a gated community without gates. This is going to be a neighborhood that is going to be meshed with the broader community. It's going to be inviting people into that neighborhood, and those people will be going out. So it is good to see that this 4,000 square feet of, as you noted, dentist's office, things like that, small commercial development is going to be happening. And but I go to three things that have been said before I go to my question that goes to council, I think. Kent, you said a plan of subdivision is concurrent with rezoning and official plan amendment, part of the process. So therefore, if we're going to have questions about where these commercial places are going to be in a 25-year development, and we are discovering later on in the process, 10 years hence, that we still haven't got any commercial spaces there because they're in phases that haven't been developed yet because we haven't got water and sewer capacity, then we are missing an opportunity to have those commercial spaces to allow us to have the meshing of this community with the others. So that's the first quote. The second quote, again from you, Kent, you said a better way of planning is not to do it in piecemeal. So that's why I'm asking the question now. I know we're in the rezoning and official plan amendment process, not in the design phase of the subdivision, but a better way to plan is not in piecemeal, you said. And thirdly, from Per, you said could be the final public meeting for this development. Well, in that case, let's have that discussion now. So should we pause this process until we have specific answers to these questions regarding where and when the commercial spaces will be that is satisfactory to council? My second.
Can he have a chance to answer that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, if I could, Madam Mayor, I'll probably forget something. That's why. So in terms of having it as a requirement, the commercial use is a requirement. I don't necessarily think the zoning could do that per se. Like we could have a range of uses that could be permitted, but zoning doesn't compel you if you have a range of use. It doesn't say you shall do this use, right? There might be other mechanisms that would be available to maybe provide for that, but generally, what we can't necessarily dictate how these blocks are going to be developed in terms of the amount of commercial use. But what we can do is we can limit that commercial use as has been required through the retail market study, and also identify the specific areas within the subdivision where they can occur. So, I mean, there are other ways that you could do it where you would have perhaps maximum amounts in separate blocks to ensure that they're spread out. But certainly the approach that we took was that we have it across the entire subdivision to allow that flexibility.
I understand, and thank you for that. And that's why, again, I wonder if council should consider pausing this process until we have a specific answer to where those will be. My second area question is regarding to the apartment buildings. This is going to be phase one, these apartment buildings. Now, according to the Ontario Building Code, elevators are only necessary in buildings 6 stories and over, and these are going to be 4. So despite the Ontario Building Code, would it be preferable, and is it being considered, to have elevators in these buildings to assist the elderly, those with mobility issues, parents with young children in strollers, or just people carrying their groceries home? Is there consideration that despite the fact that the Ontario Building Code says you don't have to have elevators in a 4-story building, is there consideration to be putting elevators in these buildings?
Yeah, I'll probably bring up Bill here to answer this one.
Through you, Madam Mayor. I'm Bill Turner, 20706 line Selwyn. To address your question, generally there's a marketability aspect to tall buildings as well. We'd probably be hard pressed to find people that would want to live in a 4-story building that are interested in climbing 4 stories tall to begin with. So typically speaking, elevator is going to happen. Our past experience, generally speaking, we're putting elevators in buildings that may not require them, but they're generally seen as a feature and something that attracts people to the opportunity, right?
Excellent.
Yeah.
Excellent. That doesn't surprise, your answer does not surprise me. Thank you.
If I may comment
Yep.
as well through you, Mayor, the concept of commercial, we were pushing for it. Something we're very interested in, something that we also believe would add tremendous value to the community. It's funny because we hear both sides of the argument. Some people would say all of these people are going to be going into Lakefield to do all of their shopping. What about the traffic? What about the parking? What about all of the issues associated? Other people would look at it the other way and say, oh my goodness, we're going to detract from the downtown area. Nobody's going to go in. Everybody's going to have everything available within the neighborhood. So there's a balance to these things. When we first started the application process, we began with a higher number. I'm going by memory, so I apologize if it's not exact, but originally we were 7,000 or 8,000 square meters of space. And I believe that was still just a fraction of the planning report that looked at the commercial aspects. So through consultation and discussion, we opted to reduce that to 4,000. Our intention is to try to incorporate it in a way that it's woven throughout the community, with possibly a little bit more emphasis on the core area where there's a larger cluster of the multi-story buildings and better parking potential. But we didn't want to preclude ourselves from including something in the earlier phase, such that it might be many, many years before there'd be an opportunity if we only allowed it in the core area, right?
Excellent. That's exactly my question. Thank you.
Right, was that your second?
No, I have one more in my second category of questions. I warned you. Through you, Mayor. I have a question about the block of 5 apartment buildings that is it possible to put up on the so we know we're talking about the plan of subdivision. Is it possible to get that PowerPoint back up? A few of my questions are going to be asking specific questions that you can go to the plan of subdivision. There you go. If you look at the great big pink blotch up at the top right, that's an acceptable planning term, right, Per? The pink blotch. Yeah, we almost had it for a second there. There we go. There it is. There it is. Okay, so I understand this is a sketch with details to come. I get that. I understand that. But going back again to the 3 quotes that I made before, let's have this discussion now, because it may be the last time we have a public meeting to have this discussion. So the block of the 5 apartments that I see with the pink parking spot in the middle, and I don't pretend to be a planner or know anything about it, but from things that I've read, that phase 8 plan resembles an old urban planning model of having a circle of apartments surrounding a mass of asphalt. It's something that urban planners such as Jane Adams spoke about generations ago. Has consideration been given, or will consideration be given to providing underground parking in these and other apartment buildings so that we could reduce the amount of asphalt in that area and other areas to allow more green spaces and to make the areas more aesthetically pleasing and environmentally responsible? Again, I don't know who I'm asking the question to.
Through the mayor, it's a good question because I think what we're dealing with in a lot of places like Lakefield are that there's still pressure with automobile dependence, right? People do need cars to get around. And that's the balance that we're trying to find with the parking requirements. So we have for apartment buildings, we're required to have, your zoning bylaw actually right now requires 2 spaces per unit for apartments, which is much higher than most other places. We've reduced that to 1.75 to bring that requirement down, which would reduce the number of spaces that would be required. Now, in terms of the model that you're talking about, what we've tried to do here, though, is you'll see here the front-facing buildings. And the idea is that you'd have commercial facing those streets so that pedestrians, it's interacting with the public realm, which is very much more of a modern planning approach. We put the parking in the back where people aren't necessarily walking because they're walking down the sidewalks and along here. But we put the parking there because it has to go somewhere, right? So that's the idea behind that design. Again, a conceptual design, as you had pointed out. Now, the main thing though, with reducing this asphalt and making it greener, that's certainly within the realm of possibility. I believe the parking spaces that are shown here exceed what would be required under the zoning. So there would be less spaces there. There would be more opportunity for landscaping, green space, that sort of thing. So, but that does, and this isn't exclusive to this type of development where we're looking at this large 10 phases. If we were doing a subdivision that had a, maybe this portion here, we would still be working in a conceptual manner at this point. Site plan control, I think Per mentioned it, I'd mentioned it as well. That's where those details get fleshed out. So that would be, and that's not a public process. Those plans are always available to the public, but there's no public meeting associated with it or anything like that, right? So, and there's no appeal rights. Well, there's no appeal rights for anything now, essentially. But that's the method behind what we were thinking here, is having this as sort of the central block where the outside of the block interacts with the public realm.
I understand it's exactly because there's no appeal process and there's no more chance for public meeting that I'm asking the question now. So I appreciate that. But I didn't hear the answer to, is underground parking being considered?
Maybe I can get through you, Madam Mayor. So we haven't got to that stage yet, John, but it's a good thought. Ultimately, at this point in the process, we're looking at zoning, we're looking at numbers of units, taking a space, dividing it up logically and trying to calculate, what's the appropriate number of units and is there parking space to support it.
Right.
Theoretically, we could have, increased the unit count and lessened the paved area in the version on the page. And pointed out we're leveraging underground parking. I think what we see here is probably kind of the worst scenario. We've done it generically, simply as a placeholder. We need unit counts to figure out traffic, to figure out sanitary, to figure out water. Like all of these things have to be calculated. We really see the numbers as maximums. We anticipate that there will be massaging of each different block that we see on the page. The single units, not so much. The single units are pretty much as they are, but the blocks, will undergo design. They will involve potentially additional builders that will assist with the build out of the project along with ourselves. So there likely will be input from multiple architects, planners, and it will go through a review process, that's typical of all development within the township and the county. So I would say generically, hey, good ideas, feel free to bring them forward. We would encourage that. Likewise to anybody in the room that has a concern, we recognize that when you do something cohesively as a large scale plan, it's scary for everybody. We didn't want to see this be do a little piece and then figure out what we're going to do next and bolt onto it. It's not easy to engineer a property, looking at the topography, looking at the available connections, looking at the servicing constraints. It's best to do it cohesively, but inherently that spooks people because you see this giant plan. The truth is, as much as we love our community, all of us, myself being one of them, and we believe that we know how great the secret is of how good it really is. We should cover the mic for that part. Ultimately, there's only a certain level of demand for housing in the area. We could all imagine a scenario where, Google's going to locate their headquarters in Selwyn, and all of a sudden there's this tremendous need and influx of people. But all statistics, all history, everything that we've experienced, including directly building in the area, there aren't people banging down the doors to come in here and take over. I think we have tried to be very conservative, saying, 20 years at 50 units a year. Currently, when we're building in the Lakefield area, our average has probably been more on the order of 15 to 20 units in the good years when things have been moving along rapidly. Ultimately, a lot may change in that time frame. When we get to these particular blocks, the further design that goes into it may evolve and could, receive input from many different people, including yourself, if interested.
Excellent. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, I'm done with my second.
All right, so Deputy Mayor Black.
Thank you, through Mayor Sennis. I'm gonna have more comments than questions. I'm gonna leave the questions to Councilor Boyko tonight. He's got quite a list there. So, I think Councilor Boyko said it well. We're very fortunate to have Triple T and not a Mattamy Homes or somebody like that out of Toronto who's gonna slam up a bunch of homes without a lot of public input. My experience is the input is well received. There's been, I think, several versions of this already looked at based on some public input. So I do believe that, the folks at Triple T are interested in listening to the concerns, and there's been a lot of great concerns brought forward tonight. Concerns on the 7th line are real. I had a farm on the 7th line for 28 years. And was threatened by the county to have it taken over for a landfill site back in the early 90s. That's how I ended up on council from 93 to 2000. And there was a stream there that fed Race Creek, and we brought that up in the process. And that was one of the factors that actually took the property off of the short list, the 3 sites. And of course, with $4 million of consulting fees in 1993, it ended up back at Bensford today. So, and I did have a cistern in that farmhouse because wells, although we have good water on the 7th line, there's not a lot of it. And there were years when it was hard to keep the cistern filled on there. So I do have concerns for the folks on the 7th line. If, the property, the digging and the construction does affect water there, it may be necessary to look at extending water services to Seaforth and some of the folks on the 7th line if that's one of the outcomes. We have to be prepared for that and think about those things as well. So Shelley and Linda brought that forward quite well, I thought. One of the other items that Dr. Gibson brought up is with respect to the properties to the east of this development and the potential for those to be developed down the road. So if you look at the map, those properties are almost the same size as this property. So there's additional potential down the road for that development, although we've already talked about servicing not really being available maybe past phase 2 or phase 3 of Lakefield. So there's a lot of infrastructure required, and that takes a lot of money and a lot of time. So, the 20 to 25 year planning line for this is not realistic, it is realistic to me because of number one, demand. And it's going to change. It's a conceptual site plan. There's been no site plan approval for specific phases at this point. So there'll be input as we move along to those site plans. No different than the Lilacs, where there's been changes to that plan, even though it's only 5 years in, based on demands and particular uses. So I feel confident that with Triple T, they're open to looking at changes as we move the project along down the years. I do have concerns around the school situation. We lost a high school a number of years ago, which was really a difficult thing for the community. On the positive side, more housing means maybe we get a high school back down the road. I would certainly support that. I would support it today because I think the amount of taxes that the school board collects in our region collectively with all the lake properties, we don't have any kids that go to school here. I think on a per capita basis, they collect more school taxes per child in our area, and they use that as an excuse for not having a high school here. That was too costly. Well, we probably collect twice as many taxes per student in our area than the city does. In fact, we probably support the city kids going to school. Now our kids are on buses. So I think that might be a positive thing about the school system, is that they might have to upgrade school systems. The bridge rehabilitation is a very real issue. My son-in-law is a structural engineer who does, he monitors bridges as part of what he does. And of course, in the next 10 or 12 years, that bridge will probably have to undergo a complete rehabilitation. It's already having problems, and we saw last year that with things that had to be fixed. So that is a big concern, and I know the county has on the master plan looking at it as a second bridge. And so, you know, that may coincide with the rehab of the existing bridge that we have that other, because that rehab, as you've seen on Highway 7, south of Peterborough, how long those bridges took to be done. It was like 5 years. So maybe that's, again, a trade-off at this point where we get that new bridge in time to do the rehab on the existing bridge downtown. Tom brought up a good point around active transportation and linkage. You know, I think there's a great opportunity with that Race Creek EP area. I know there are already trails in there. There's already people using it for education, schools, those sorts of things. I think there's an opportunity there to link that in with the active transportation plan for the bigger plan and make it a place where people want to live, because there's a great place to walk on trails and see nature as well. So I think that needs to be fleshed out a little bit more. I know there's been some conversations around that sort of thing, but you know, as Councillor Boyko says, you know, let's make this a community that is enticing to people and they want to live in the community, and you know, it exudes the same culture of the village as well. So I think there's opportunities there. We have to put our hand up and talk about them. And I think the Turners are more than happy to sit down and talk about some of those changes or to it. But it is a conceptual site plan, and you know, it's going to change. It's going to change based on public demands and needs and the environment and all those things that we know are going to be issues moving forward. So I think there's with the developer we have, there's lots of opportunities there to be heard and to make this a project that the village could be proud of and the township could be proud of. So I'll just leave it at that. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Councillor Boyko. Do you have any more questions? Oh, Councillor Henry.
Thank you, through you, Mayor Senes. I don't have any questions. However, I do feel compelled to comment now. I moved here about 25 years ago, and I was so furious when Lakefield got its second traffic light. Lost my marbles. And then it got a third. And then we had a really big shiny billboard show up in town, and that was it. The town had gone to pot. I was leaving, and I moved to the 15th line. And I've remained there ever since. And oddly enough, I see more development on the waterfront and in the rural areas than I do in Lakefield. The process for Lakefield South has taken us 25 years to get where we are now. And it sounds like it's going to take another 25 or 30 years. I hope to see you all there. But it's important that we're doing this because everyone wants to leave a legacy and make sure that we do things right and get it right. I think we do need to take a little bit of comfort that many things are going to change by 2050. The building standards will change. Our environmental practices and building codes will change to accompany that. Schools will be developed. They will build schools. All right. They're not going to do it tomorrow. They're going to build them. They will change the school board districts, probably 10 more friggin' times by 2050. It will keep getting revamped. And we should take comfort that yes, progress is going to happen. We do have a voice in it. My concern here more so, though, is that as we move forward, we do have to keep the vision here long term. All right. It's quite possible that the bridge, it'll be 4 lanes. Because how do you take down a bridge and repair it? These are going to happen. Because what would the environmental study be to put up a whole bridge across the Otonabee River, say 20 years from now with environmental standards? What if they're going to be then? This is going to happen. 7th line, you probably end up on municipal water by the sounds of it. And damn the beavers. We need to keep our vision long term. And I do caution against false narratives. Our public meetings that we are hosting here, we didn't even have to host this under new provincial rules and regulations, but we're hosting it. And it does not align with Donald Trump, any other world issue, or any other conspiracy theory rabbit hole you need to go down to placate yourself today. We held the meeting, we scheduled it. Donald Trump opened his blowhole. Gee, I'm so surprised. What else is new? Come on, guys, let's move forward here. More concerning, though, is these meetings don't have to be held anymore. We don't have to listen to them. We will, because we live here too, and we do care for our community. But the province has laid it out that this is no longer a part of the process. As Councillor Boyko has referred to a couple of times, we should be talking this out because we might not get this chance again. We might need to be considering why or how we can still be publicly engaged in this process to make sure that the vision that Triple T has and that the community members have moves forward the way that we see it beyond the end of our nose and today and where things are going for 2050. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Boyko, how many questions do you have left?
Several.
Okay, then I'm going to call for a 5-minute break.
Okay.
A bio break.
And you needed to say it.
Yeah, no,
people, so shh. All right, Councillor Boyko, continue.
The mayor doesn't often use the gavel. It's a little jarring. Thank you. Mayor Sennison, through you. A couple more questions. I'm on to parks now. And the current draft plan of subdivision denotes walkways as parks. But when I read the Tatum engineering report, it says that that is not permissible. So does this mean that the next draft plan, the next iteration of the plan of subdivision will have that altered? And does that mean that walkways and trails that are not parks, will that mean that we will end up with larger parks or another park?
Through the mayor, I might need to clarify your question, but
please.
I think that what you're asking is, are those walkways counting towards the 5% parkland dedication? They do not.
Okay.
So the 5% parkland is calculated with those, I'll point them out.
Yeah, that's why I
Probably
wanted
easier for
that
me to
up.
do it
It's
this way.
helpful.
So this block here, this block here, and so you don't even see the trails, those multi-use trails on here. You just see wider right of ways or wider road allowances, right? There was a point, there was an iteration of the plan that had multi-purpose trails between the lots. Maybe you're thinking back to that.
I saw, yeah.
And we were including those because they were sort of park areas off the right of way. They weren't involved with that land conveyance, but after discussions with the township, we moved those away. There were concerns of course, from the township's end. So what we're left with here is our parkland dedication here. We tried to place them in areas where, they would serve the bulk of the development, so that where the biggest part of the development is set to occur.
So a question that I was asked, and I thought I knew the answer, but I'll just confirm that the stormwater management, they don't count as parks. The walkways don't count as parks. The environmental protection area doesn't count as parks. The 5% that is legislated that must be devoted to parks are simply the areas that you have shown us.
Correct.
Perfect. Okay, my second question then, it goes to, I understand what you just said about where you located the parks. That's where the most people are. They're in blocks 9 and 10. They're located in the central part of the current plan, but they're not to be built out until phases 6 and phase 10, if I'm reading this properly. So does this mean that a great number of people, a great number of families will be living in this area before there are any parks available to them?
So through the mayor, good question. We actually changed the phase in which that first park will be developed. It'll be developed during phase 3 now. So
and which park is that?
And that's this park down here. So this comes in during phase 3, which will provide that park space for the first 3 phases. And up until, I can't recall, Jeremy, do you know when this phase was for that one? I think it might be 8 or 9. 9.
Yeah,
the 9 would be where the
9.
other.
Yeah, so perhaps you could, just if you could point to that bottom one.
Yeah.
There you go. Okay, give us an approximate size of that, not necessarily in feet, but is the size of a soccer field, a football field could fit in that park, or is it a small park? I mean, what are we talking in size of a size? A pickleball. Don't even start pickleball.
You could fit 30 pickleballs right across. No.
So what is the approximate size of the park?
So through the mayor, the approximate size of that park, I might be able to get it for you. Will I be able to click here? Right. Oh, okay. So yeah. So Bill's just telling me that they're actually, well, that's the length of the lot though.
Behind it.
Right. So yeah, the width, but right there.
No, so I don't have the depth.
Yeah,
but
so
the width to give you a sense of.
Right. So yeah, in terms of scale, so Bill just pointed out to me that these are 40 feet wide, these lots.
Right.
So, you're probably looking at about 500 feet long or so along there. And then with a width of about maybe 120 feet or so, 100 feet.
So I guess the point is that I'm trying to say is that it's a large park. It's not a small park.
Yes, through the chair.
It's a large.
Absolutely. You could fit playgrounds, you could fit some playing fields on it. Yeah.
Okay, excellent. My next phase of questions, if we're talking about phases, is about the environment. On page 99 of the GSD Limited Environmental Impact Assessment Report, it was dated June 30th, 2023. I'll quote it. It says the proposed development will not result in negative impacts on identified natural heritage features or their functions, provided the mitigation provided the mitigation measures described in sections 5 and 7 are implemented. In particular, obtaining the relevant permits from ORCA and the MECP. So have the relevant permits from ORCA and the Minister of Environment and Conservation and Parks been obtained?
So through the mayor, not yet. And they aren't obtained until we go through the process of actually developing the land. So those permits are for actually doing works. So the MECP for the, I believe that's for the servicing that will go through here. So you can see there's a main that has to cross over through here. Right. Okay. So that's, and any other sort of stormwater works that require MECP approval. Any works within the regulated area of the Conservation Authority require a permit, but that's done when site works occur.
Later.
Yeah. And just to speak to the recommendations in Chris's report, so those are implemented through draft plan conditions of approval in consultation with the Conservation Authority. So they have reviewed his reports and they put together their set of conditions, and they include all the recommendations from Mr. Ellingwood's report.
Excellent. Thank you. My second question with respect to the environment, it talks about mitigation measures. Mitigation measures are described in sections 5 and 7 that include a 30-meter buffer zone along Rays Creek. It's on page 85 of the report. So is that part of the current draft plan of subdivision, or could you point out where that would be for further protection for this environmental?
So through the mayor, you can follow my shaky laser pointer here, but that's that bold line there is the 30-meter setback. So that incorporates, and Chris could maybe clarify, but that incorporates other wetland features and other sensitive features within that Rays Creek sort of area or the greater area surrounding Rays Creek.
Okay, good. My final question on the environment is that the GHD report, again, it states that this is a concept that I don't understand. Could you explain this to me? The GHD report states that wetland compensation will be completed for any smaller wetlands recommended for approval or recommended for removal in consultation with ORCA and the appropriate permits obtained. So could you explain that process? What is wetland compensation? And is this compensation, has it happened? Is it going to happen? Has it been discussed? What exactly is that?
Through the mayor, it has been discussed, and perhaps this would be the best time to bring Chris up to just give you the details on what that is.
Thank you, Chris. We're quoting your report, and here we are.
Well, I wrote the report, so I'm the one to talk to it. So
John,
thank you.
through the mayor.
Through you, Mayor Senes. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. And through you, Madam Mayor. Yeah, so again, so the question is, if you see that red line on there, the red line represents what we described as the development limit. So it's a combination of the creek, the wetlands, the woodlots, and the respective buffers from those,
right?
Most of which are the 30-meter buffer from the wetland features on this property. So the small weird shaped one in the south corner,
yeah.
The ones in the middle and the ones around Rays Creek, that's the buffer from the creek. And the fortunate part is nature isn't always straight lines, development is. There's a few spots we have to cross little tiny portions with either a water main or some of the roads interfere with it. We've adjusted those in consultation with ORCA through a very long discussion on compensation. The compensation is fairly minor, and the compensation is going to involve some additional wetland being created through a specific design that will be done during conditional draft approval, with a permit from the Conservation Authority to actually put those in place, and that will occur in that southern stormwater pond. So the western portion of that stormwater pond block that's shown in green on the southern part of the property. That will be where we've designed it. And I've actually worked with the engineer for a couple of years on this to actually design a wetland compensation within that block that will hopefully satisfy the township and the Conservation Authority.
Excellent. Thank you for that. Through you, Mayor, if I could move on now to the fifth, the recreational open space that Chris, we may be calling back. I'm not sure. the Tatum Engineering Report states that there is nothing in section 6.2.15.3C of the official plan regarding this area that ensures that it will be free and open to the public. So there's nothing in the official plan that says that. But I've noticed in another report that Triple T wishes this land to be open to the public in perpetuity. And so the current draft plan of subdivision shows, or at least indicates, that there will be a trail system going through. So I guess what I'm asking is, who is going to own this property? Who is going to develop this property, the trail system, and who is going to maintain it once the trail system is there?
Bill's got this one. Through you, Madam Mayor. So it's unresolved at this point in time. We've taken a very simple stance just to say it is our intention, and we're happy to confirm through the subdivision agreement that we will be handing over the lands for a steward to look after it in perpetuity. And there would be conditions placed upon that from our perspective, that it would be available for public use forever. That was our intention from the get-go, and it's part of what I think will make this a great addition to the community, if not for the new residents, for the many, many people that currently use the property today, right? So ultimately, we have left the door open to ensure that we don't eliminate Selwyn Township from participating in that model if they're interested and willing to do so. But we have had some discussions with other entities, including Kawartha Land Trust, who have expressed an interest in the property and who have significant experience in managing those types of properties and improving them for public use for the long run. So our commitment is simply that we will provide it for the community use, and we will ensure that the conditions of that opportunity are such that it won't change in the future. It'll be available in perpetuity for everybody to use.
Through you, Mary. Yeah, that is terrific to hear, because that section of property is a gem, and it is not only needs to be protected for environmental reasons, but it can be protected for public use, which is tremendous. So the conveyance, I've read the county's official plan. I looked it up, 11.6.15, that says that there is, it is absolutely possible that could be conveyed to Selwyn Township, and it is possible, as you've mentioned, that it could be paid to a nonprofit as well, to take on all that I've just talked about, and that is great. The next thing that I'd like to talk about are the streets. The township passed us through you, Mayor Senes, the township passed a sidewalk bylaw just recently stating that all new constructed streets, with minor exceptions, cul-de-sacs and things, must have sidewalks. Does the current plan of subdivision adhere to the current township sidewalk bylaw?
Through the mayor, yes, it does.
Love to hear that. This goes to our staff. Once this moves down the road in the various phases, there are going to be a number of children that are going to be walking down Tower, I don't know what to call it, the Tower Hill Road, the Water Tower Road. I've heard people call it the Champs-Élysées because it's a great big wide road that goes to a tower. Is there, to our staff, is there plans to build a sidewalk along Water Tower Road?
Through you, Madam Mayor. Yes, there is. There will be a multi-use. Yep, there's a connectivity plan there. There's a multi-use path on one side of the road, and then there'll be a sidewalk on the other side going down. Technically, as our elevated tank service road.
Right, elevator tank service road.
But yeah, there is a plan.
For the Champs-Élysées.
Oh, whatever. Yeah, there is a plan to have a multi-use trail and a sidewalk on either side of that.
Okay, excellent to hear. Okay, through you, Mayor Senes, this goes back to Kent, or I don't know. Another question that comes from my reading of the Tatum Engineering Report. It notes that there's problems with the terminus of streets D and E stopping at dead ends. We go back to the plan of subdivision right at the top. you can see right there at the top going straight out in a westerly direction, that is, or easterly, that's Bruce Gibson's farm. And the other one going to the left, that, I think I'm reading it correctly, would be emptying onto what is now Murray Street. Right, but right now they're dead ends. So it noted that there are problems, that this is unacceptable for snow removal. So the road plan, this will have to be changed. I don't know how they would be changed. Are there plans now for how they would be changed to meet the problems that have been noted about snow removal on those two dead end roads?
I can answer that real quickly. So through your worship, those will be addressed through as cul-de-sacs, but temporary cul-de-sacs. So there'll be easements across the development parcels that'll be lifted at a later date in the future. So the lots that you see can then redevelop once the connections are made and the cul-de-sacs are no longer needed.
Excellent. Okay, thank you. Another question I have with streets. We don't know what's eventually going to happen with Bruce's farm. He was asking about it now, where Street D now ends. But with respect to Street E, that is the one going, that little one going on to Murray Street. We do know what's going to be happening there. It's with respect to Street E, the Tatum Engineering traffic study, it said on page 1011, it mentions the additional traffic on Murray and emptying onto William and then Clementi Street. So that means that there will be additional traffic not only onto Bridge Street, not only into the 7th line, but into that neighborhood too, into Murray, which is a narrow neighborhood street, and Clementi and William Street. But linked to that, if you would take a look at the white box to the left there, there's nothing there, but we know that land running parallel to the north and Street D is currently owned by Aon. And if you look at the county's official plan, it sits now that it will someday contain a long-term care facility. It'll be 28 single detached units, 60 if it builds out as planned. But this is what the county official plan says: 28 single detached units, 60 garden suites, 80 long-term care suites, and 180 long-term care units. That's a big facility. That'll mean a lot of visitors, a lot of residents, a lot of staff, and a lot of emergency vehicles going in and out. So my question is this, as this goes to just simply planning, is it good planning practice to have that on the books and to have substantial traffic that will be accessing the Aon property now, according to what is there, all going through Street E and thereby down Murray, William, and Clementi Streets? I don't know whether that's good planning practice for a facility of that size to have one entrance egress. Is that standard planning practice for a facility of that size to have one egress?
Would Keziah, could you maybe take the podium for a minute? You know what?
So yeah, so through you, Madam Mayor, how do I delicately answer that? So the Aon property received its approvals a number of years ago. It's probably early 2000s, early to mid 2000s, I want to say. It has been sitting on the books since that time, approved. My understanding at the time when it was approved is that it was contingent upon receiving ministry approval for those long-term care beds. And they, as far as I'm aware, that's what they are still waiting for. The approval is currently on the books. It has technically lapsed, that development proposal. And there is a time period where the county can deem it not to have lapsed if the applicant comes forward. So that's where we are today. I don't know if that fully answers your question, but
it does. And trying to guess what Aon's going to do with that property in the future is a mug's game. But we have two ways we can go forward. One, Kent said a better way of planning is not to do it piecemeal. And then we've had comment that, well, there's no use talking about planning in the future because we can't predict the future. So let's just hope things work out. I would rather be looking at piecemeal. So my question basically is this. If we take a look at the bottom there, Street A, it allows no eastern access from Street A into the Aon property. Would it be simply crazy of me to suggest that it might be valid to consider, because Aon could be building this in the future, that access is made from Street A going across up into the Aon property, so that it would have two methods of egress and entrance, rather than dumping all of those vehicles eventually onto Murray and William and Clementi Street?
Yeah, I can try first through the mayor. So there's a lot to unpack there. Councilor Boyko. So I think just going back to your comment about is it good planning to have that all go out through one street? Well, I think because I had pointed out that it was approved 20 years ago, the plans, those units are counted when we're looking at the traffic study. The Aon development is included in those models. And so what that does is it paints a picture of everything that we're doing here in terms of the connectivity of the roads, right? So we're not just, traffic from here is not just going through here and joining up with the Aon traffic. Traffic is using the 7th line. And at this point, we're that far into this phasing that we already have a 7th line connection. We already have a Tower Road connection, right? So when you look at it that way, it's all about integrating the streets and the surrounding development. That's why we have these connections here, is to integrate as best as we can. I'm not sure what went into the planning in terms of what was approved here, but I can say that this development from a traffic standpoint is at acceptable levels while using these entrances and these connections. Now, in terms of punching a road through here, I think were you suggesting this road through here? Like, sorry,
Yeah,
you see my latest?
Wherever it went through, to give them a second point.
Right. That wasn't what we'd planned. Things could change in the future, but as far as this plan goes, we planned it with the intention of having that connection up here. I'm not sure if that was related to a previous draft plan. I believe it was, right? Yeah, so this was related to the development that was actually what was draft approved here,
right?
What was proposed there. And I don't think it was feasible to take a road through what was planned for that area. I'm not sure exactly what the layout looked like, but the layout allowed for Murray Street, which terminates right about here.
Yeah.
And it goes right, and it would go right across in a straight line to that connection.
Okay, good. Thank you. My last question about roads is the county and township official plans have been in flux for some time. And the county plan looks like it's almost ready to be approved. Is the current roads plan, is it consistent with the current county official plan?
Sorry, just through you, Chair. Can I just clarify, like the roads plan that's on this subdivision application?
Yeah.
So currently, no, because we don't have, this subdivision isn't developed yet. So it just, excuse me, it just appears as it did on one of those earlier sketches. It's a blank slate, basically.
Okay. My last question, Madam Mayor, you'll be happy to know. Water and sewer. So this is probably going to go to Adam. There is opportunity for infilling in a number of other areas. We have some subdivisions on the books already going through the process. And we are talking about water sewer capacity. It's already been stated that there's insufficient water sewer capacity to build all of the phases of Lakefield South. So how do we allocate that water and sewer capacity? Do we allocate it all to Lakefield South as it develops? Do we hold on and allocate it as others go through the process and are ready to build? How do we allocate the water and sewer capacity that we have, because we've got a demand and supply situation in our hands?
Good question. Through you, Madam Mayor, that's something we'd have to work out through site plan control. We do have limited capacity. Right now, we have a fair amount of capacity to get through a good chunk of the development here, but we do have a couple other proposals on the books right now. So we'd have to look at that through site plan control and the subdivision agreements just to see how much capacity we want to allocate per phase, if we allocate per the whole development, or how we look at that, because it is a long-term project, right? So allocating a good chunk of the capacity in the system for 25 years has its impact, right?
Right. So if there are other developments that, subdivision developments that are right now on the books and moving their way through Bishop Street and others that are moving their way through the process. It wouldn't be that we would say to them, sorry, we can't have capacity for you because we're saving it for Lakefield South.
Well, through you, Madam Mayor, to be fair, like the Bishop Street development isn't a very large development. Either.
Right,
So
right, I
the
understand, but there's others.
Kind of minimal, right? So nothing would really hinder those ones aside from something catastrophic, right? But those smaller developments wouldn't really be impacted by the scale of this.
Okay, excellent. Okay, that completes my questions, Madam Mayor, and I thank everyone for their patience as they allowed me to go through them. And I hope that I know I learned a whole lot. I hope others did too. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. I recognize that no one likes change, but we all know change is inevitable. The good news is this is going to be a long process over maybe 30 years, and it will gradually evolve. Plan for Lakefield South has been on the books, as we've heard, for 20+ years. And the total number of homes that were in our official plan was for 2,400+ homes. So when you think of that as a whole, this is just a portion of it. Because there's such a long length of time for the build out, as the deputy mayor has said, this is going to morph over time. It won't be what we see today. And that will be because of accommodating changes in buying patterns, etc. So I want to thank you all for coming tonight and showing your interest in this. I know you're all passionate about the village. I am too. And I think, you know, we have to look at this as a positive thing. I think it is a good plan. I know it's been worked on for years. And, you know, it's still, even with approval tonight, nothing will get started for the next 2 years at a minimum. So I don't even know if I'm going to be around by the time, you know, it's all said and done. Maybe some of you will. You're younger than me. No.
We're all going to be here.
Okay. I know.
We'll all be in that AR.
Yeah, I think so. There you go. Anyway, we have before us a recommendation. And that is that the report of the planner regarding a subdivision application, County File 15T 21001, official plan amendment, County File number 150P 21006, and zoning bylaw amendment, Township File number C1520, related to lands described as part lots 26 and 27, concession 7 in the Lakefield Warren, known as Triple T Holding Limited, Race Creek subdivision, be received for information, and that council defer decision on the zoning bylaw amendment, file number C1520, as well as the council resolution regarding the related subdivision, county file number 15T 21001, and official plan amendment, county file number 150P 21006, to a future date following consideration of the comments that we've heard today received at this meeting. Can I have someone move that, please? Councillor Henry, seconded by Councillor Koulis. I'd like a recorded vote, please.
Sorry about that. Okay. So, sorry, Mayor Black or Deputy Mayor, Ron Black.
Yes.
Councillor Boyko.
Yes.
Councillor Koulis.
Yes.
Councillor Henry.
Yes.
Mayor Senes.
Yes.
All in favor, that is carried. I was totally out there.
Yeah. Unanimous, it is. So we also have confirming bylaw 2025-014. I need someone to move that. Councillor Koulis. Deputy Mayor Black, all in favor? That is carried. Thank you. And a motion to adjourn, Councillor Henry and Councillor Koulis, all in favor? That's carried. Thank you very much. Have a good evening.